Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have here another inks comparison video, and this is Scribo inks comparison number 3. So I think with that, let's go and swab up some of these inks. So I get a lot of questions on how I do these ink videos. So I decided I would add this to the front of each of the ink videos. I put links in the descriptions, but I know some of you watch this on TVs or mobile devices, so you don't get to see this. So first off, the paper is the number one question I get asked. What paper do I use for these ink comparison videos? So this is the original Tomoe River. This is 52 GSM, and it is the white, not the cream, the white. Where possible, I try to go for the white because the cream can actually change the color of the ink just a little bit. So this is Tomoe River 52 GSM in the white. A lot of people get confused as well because I have what looks to be a grid on this page, and it's actually an Oxford Optik pad. These are the pads that I actually use when I'm writing my writing samples for pen reviews or in my currently ink. So they have these little squares up here. I just use that because it's a good guide for me when I put this very thin sheet of Tomoe River over. I can actually see squares, so it helps me write a little bit sort of straight on the page. Not always, but sometimes it does. The other thing that I also have is I have a bottle of water, plain water, and I dip my nib in here. So for consistency, I use the same fountain pen, or I guess it's not a fountain pen, it's using a fountain pen nib though. This is a 3D printed pen from William Shakour in the UK. So he prints this material 3D, and it has a number 8 size Bock nib which I can unscrew, and you can see there. So it is just a dip pen holder for a number 8 size Bock nib, and the idea is I want to have consistency with the writing sample. So I use this, I dip it in the ink, I write, and then I will dip it in here and I will rinse the nib off several times and I will dry it, and then at that point I will then go on to do the next ink swatch and the next writing sample. So there you have it. That's how I do my ink swatches. So I just wanted to show you that here. Now on to the ink comparison video. So the first ink here from Scribo is Blu Cosmico, and yes, these are all going to be ink samples, unfortunately. However, let's take a look at this and see what it looks like. So we'll do an ink swatch here, and this I can always see when an ink is going to be definitely a sheening ink. This is quite a thick viscousy ink. Now we're going to do a second pass over the top half, and that will show the difference between a wet or a broad writing nib and a dry or a narrow writing nib. But I can already see the sheen starting to form on the paper there. So this is Scribo, and it is Blu Cosmico, which is definitely going to be a sheening ink for sure. The next ink here is Scribo Notturno Voila. So we'll do another ink swatch here, and this is already looking like quite a nice purple coloured ink. We'll do a second pass over the top half to show the difference between what would be a wet or a broad writing nib and a dry or a narrow writing nib. So this is Scribo, and it is Notturno Voila. And I have to say that that is an interesting purple ink. It's quite a dark coloured purple, certainly on the writing sample there so far, and also the second pass as well. The next ink here from Scribo is Scribo Verde Mediterraneo. So we'll do another ink swatch here. And I'd have to say that this does look, maybe as it's going on, a little bit like the Verde Bosco, but maybe it's a little bit more tealy turquoisey. So we'll do a second pass here over the top half to show the difference between a wet and a broad, or a dry or a narrow writing nib. So this is Scribo, and it is Verde, and it is Mediterraneo. So that's already looking like an interesting tealy, turquoisey coloured ink. And then the last ink I have here on this video is Scribo, and it's Giallo Cannella. So we'll do an ink swatch. Now this is a very light goldeny brown, almost hitting on being a yellow. We'll do a second pass over the top half to show the difference between a wet and a broad writing nib, or a dry or a narrow writing nib. And I'd have to say this looks quite similar to an ink that I have from Diamine, which is Diamine Autumn Oak, and which is an ink that I do like a lot. So this is Scribo, and it is Giallo Cannella. But that actually does look like a beautiful autumny colour there. So I think let's now go and check out these inks now that they have dried. So the first ink is Scribo Blu Cosmico, and I have to say that when I put this on, I could immediately see the sheen. I knew it was going to be a sheen monster. Sheen aside, can you see the difference between a wet or a broad writing nib and a dry or a narrow writing nib? Yes, you definitely can. There is a huge difference there. Is there shading going on? There is some shading in the pulled area, not a huge amount. And I think mostly that's because of the intense sheen that is going on there. So if I show you the sheen here, you will see how crazy that sheen is. You've got some really beautiful gold sheen on what is I want to say a blurple coloured ink. Although it's called Blu Cosmico, I do think it's got some hints of purple in that ink as well. It's not just a blue. It's also maybe hinting towards a blue-black as well. It is an interesting colour ink, and if you want a sheen monster, then this definitely is an ink to add to your collection. The next ink here is Scribo Notturno Voila, and can you see the difference between a wet or a broad writing nib and a dry or a narrow writing nib? Yes, you definitely can. You can see a lot more than Scribo Blu Cosmico. Can you see any shading? There is shading going around in the pulled area there as well. It is quite dark though, and obviously the writing sample is quite dark because it's a wet writing nib. Now, is there any sheen going on? Now, you do get sheen on purple inks, and I'd have to say I'm really not seeing a lot, but there is a little bit here, and there is a little bit in the writing sample as well. It's a little bit harder to detect. I'm not sure if that will actually come out on camera, but I can see just a hint of that there. The next thing is Scribo Verde Mediterraneo, and I'd have to say that this is a really nice colour. I think I would definitely like to add this colour to my collection at some point. So can you see the difference between a wet or broad and a dry or narrow writing nib? Yes, you definitely can. There is a huge difference between the two there. Is there any shading going on? There definitely is shading around the pulled area. You can see a few splotches there as well. The writing sample, because it's a wet writing nib, is actually going to be a lot darker. So it's going to mimic more the wetter area there. Is there any sheen going on this ink? And again, there is a slight amount around the edges. There's edge case of sheen there, and also around here as well. Slight amount. I'm not really seeing it in the writing sample though. So there is a very minute amount of sheen going on there, but not a huge amount. And then the last thing here is Scribo, and this is Giallo Cannella, and this really does remind me of Diamine Autumn Oak. Very, very nice colour. Really nice for autumn. I do like this colour a lot. Again, probably another colour that I might want to add, although I do have Diamine Autumn Oak as well. So do I really need two inks of almost the same colour? Probably not. Can you see the difference between a wet or a broad or a dry or narrow writing nib? Yes, you can. There is quite a difference there. The writing sample is obviously going to look like the wet because it is a wet writing nib. There is some shading going on, not a huge amount though, but you can see some shading in that pulled area. And then, is there any sheen? No. And typically, I wouldn't be looking to see a lot of sheen on a light brown coloured autumny colour ink anyway. So don't expect any sheen from Scribo Giallo Cannella. So there you have it. That's my Scribo inks comparison number 3 video. If there are any of these inks that you like, let me know in the comments below. Likewise, if there are any other inks you'd like me to take a look at, let me know in the comments below. So that's my Scribo inks comparison number 3 video. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.